Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace reporting live here at the famous Birdland Theater here at Birdland here in New York City, commemorating and celebrating the 105th birthday of pianist and composer Thelonious Sphere Monk. Birdland Theater this month has decided to celebrate here the legacy and the life of Monk. And tonight, I have not done a solo piano piece in well over 7 years. And tonight, paying honor and homage to the great Thelonious Sphere Monk is pianist Aaron Goldberg. Now, Aaron, for over the last 20 years, has played extensively and toured with the likes of Wynton Marsalis, as well as Joshua Redman and Kirk Rosenwinkel, just to name the many endless few. The Boston native got his roots playing and studying under the great Jerry Bergonzi, and over the last 25 years, this gentleman not only has become a proficient piano player, but he's also brought another language to Black American music by way of jazz. Tonight, you're going to see an intimate set of him playing and also his rendition of Thelonious Sphere Monk's music. And I had a chance to sit down and talk to him about, one, the importance of Thelonious Monk, as well as what it means to him and his music, as well as we reflect on why solo piano was very important to the musicians as well as music fans. And we also sit down and talk about his time playing with Joshua Redman, as well as his interactions with another one of his contemporaries, the great Fred Meldau. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of Mr. Aaron Goldberg performing solo Monk here at Birdland Theater, here on the Pace Report, here in New York City. I told you during the set that I don't even think a handful of solo piano sets. And I think John Medeski was my first one because he did a solo piano many years ago, and he did the record release at La Paz Champs, and it was just him by himself. And I saw you in a very different light, as the viewers will see, that you are playing intimately with Monk's music, the Yamaha piano, and a selected handful of people that came out to support you. What's it like playing in a solo setting?
I think the first thing to say about it is that it's a completely different mental experience, psychological experience from playing with bands. And I've spent my whole life playing with great bands. Ultimately, the musical skills that you develop playing in bands are social. They're all about empathy for your compatriots. They're all about listening, reacting in the moment, and basing everything that you play on what everybody else around you is playing. So, of course, you have a fountain of ideas coming from the inside, but you also have a fountain of ideas coming from the outside, multiple fountains of ideas. And how you basically handle all the millions of decision points that result from the intersection of what everyone else is playing and what's coming from here determines the flow of the music, determines the emotion in the music, determines the connection between the musicians, determines the conversation. It's a social experience. It's interactive. Playing solo is, of course, in many ways, the polar opposite of that. Everything is coming from here. You're having Bill Evans called it conversations with himself. You're having a certain amount of give and take with yourself, meaning everything that I play is hopefully related to everything that I just played. But you're completely dependent on your own creativity and your own security and your own confidence. And it's not a social event, obviously. There is, of course, a relationship with the audience, and in this particular case, there's a relationship with the great Thelonious Monk, which both creates opportunities and creates, how can I say, problems to solve. So, of course, Monk is one of our great geniuses. There's a reason that we celebrate his birthday every year. This was his 105th birthday. As jazz musicians, especially pianists, but I think I speak for all jazz musicians, we are forever indebted to him for the incredible gift, especially of his compositions. And so I'm celebrating his birthday, I'm honoring him, and I'm having a relationship, personal, social relationship with Monk's music, and more important, like facing a whole bunch of aesthetic decisions about how do I want to play this music that is so singular and has such a strong stamp of Thelonious Monk on it, that even when you make it your own, it's still half his and half yours. So I think that was essentially my objective, was to approach every piece with the goal of doing Monk justice and sort of transforming Monk's music into something that's half Monk and half me. Not 90% me and 10% Monk, and not 10% Monk, or not 90% Monk and 10% me. So I was going for that balance, and I think I would have to listen back and tell you if I achieved that balance with every tune, but that was essentially my objective. How can I not stamp Monk's music with my personality, but rather serve Monk's music with my take, mostly from the improvisational side, right? So he's giving you this written material. We've all listened to Monk. I've spent a lot of time listening to Monk. No one can ever play the piano the way Monk did. And Monk played a lot of solo piano. He made a lot of solo records. A lot of the tunes that I played are tunes that he did approach at one point or another solo. The last thing I wanted to do was try to recreate Monk playing Monk. I would fail. Anyone would fail at that, and also probably wouldn't be that interesting. It wasn't really the idea. On the other hand, I think Monk's music requires deep study. So I tried to do the study that I felt was needed, and then I tried to enjoy the moment, speak as I speak with my natural musical accent, and hopefully achieve that balance that I was searching for.
Aaron, there are some very preeminent jazz composers who we will be playing for the next
Yes.
100 years. Duke Ellington, Dizzy Gillespie,
Wayne.
yeah, Wayne Shorter, and now we got, Christian McBride and Pat Metheny, who are now, it's weird how each generation has a different take on Monk. And you being a piano player, what is your take on his compositions right now in the moment, and how the jazz world, we got, the jazz world where they have orchestras that play Monk's music. Do you think that it's being appreciated more, or do you think that we need more work to understand his genius?
Great question. I think that one of the great contributions of Jazz Learning Center and Winton and everybody that has worked with him is to remind the rest of the world, teach those who don't know, and remind those who once may have heard of the genius of Monk, Ellington, and many more. Our iconic African American jazz icons, iconic exponents of this music. So, I think Monk is much more appreciated than he was 25 years ago. And I do give a lot of credit to him for that. And the jazz scene as a whole has done a pretty good job, I think, of honoring Monk. Whether somebody like Frank Kimbrough, as you said, many people have done whole albums of Monk's music. Many people have done tributes to Monk. It feels like every year.
John Beasley has an opportunity.
Yeah. John Beasley has an opportunity to try to celebrate Monk's birthday and make. It's not the kind of. It's not a paying homage type of situation, because Monk is such a iconoclastic, creative thinker, and it wouldn't do Monk's music justice to just pay homage to it, right? You have to do something creative to it to respect it, because Monk was an innovator, and if you want to respect innovation, you have to try to innovate yourself. There's this eternal debate, the dialectic between, am I a student of the music, or am I an innovator? Right? Do I respect the tradition, or do I push it forward? Well, it's all a big misunderstanding, because the tradition of jazz is a tradition of innovation. So if you're not both, studying the tradition and then making something of your own out of it, if you're not both a traditionalist and an innovator, then you're not a jazz musician. Right? The true jazz musicians, and the history of this music is a history of innovation based on a strong tradition that came before. So you never want to feel like you have to choose between one or the other, and students always ask these kind of questions. If you study the greats that came before, how do you become yourself? Well, that's exactly how you become yourself, is by studying the greats that came before and realizing that they were themselves.
Yeah.
They studied the greats that came before and became themselves and separated themselves from the past and offered something to the future, and that's our job. So if you, I think, properly conceive of the jazz tradition as a tradition of innovation, when it's time to play Monk's music, a great innovator imitating Monk is not enough. You have to bring yourself to that music. So it's a celebration of his unique voice, but also of his contributions, which inspire us to make our contributions. And I think he is being recognized more every year. There was a great documentary that came out in the 90s, and I think at that point about Monk, I think it was just called
Straight No Chaser,
right? So that was, for me, that was kind of like the first public wake up to Monk's genius. And
even Kelly's book.
Kelly's book was maybe the next big thing that happened. And a bunch of events that happened in Lincoln Center, a bunch of records, and I feel like he's now forever, going to be living on. He's never gone. Monk is with us forever. I don't think that means that everybody understands his genius. That's a whole other type of question, and I'm not 100% sure that anybody fully understands his genius in the sense that anybody really knows what it was like to be Thelonious Monk. You know, we're all different from each other. It's hard for me to know exactly what it's like to be Brian Pace and vice versa, but I think it's particularly tough for people to know what it was like to be Monk, even for his friends. And so there will always be a mysterious element to his genius, and maybe there's a mysterious element to all genius.
Right.
And that's one reason why genius exists. But I think Monk is a particularly extreme case of that. That's obvious if you do a study of his life or see Straight Up Chase or read the book.
I want to go back to the solo piano aspect of this. I have an extensive record collection, and there are some very important solo piano records. Monk's is the Bill Evans record. McCoy Tyner recorded a fabulous record in the I think late 80s, 90s. Brubeck, he recorded a couple of beautiful solo piano records. Oscar Peterson has a great.
Yeah, he does.
Listening to those records, validating, or even Art Tatum. Yeah, we have
Especially
to go.
Art Tatum.
Definitely Art Tatum. Listening to those records, do you think that they really showcase up close the genius of those piano players that I mentioned? And those records are not perfect. Some of them are not perfect, and some of them are like the second Monk solo record. He's playing a little clunky on it, but it's cool though.
Monk was never someone that strove for technical perfection. That was not really part of his artistic concept. It wasn't part of his approach to the piano. So I think the word perfect is not really a word that I associate with Monk. As opposed to someone like Oscar, who clearly does strive for and achieves kind of perfection. I think Monk's message to the world did have to do with the futility of actually striving for technical perfection, or maybe the shallowness of it from his perspective. Like, he was always going for the thing that was obviously wrong and making you question whether it's not better than the right thing. And in fact, now we come to appreciate that it is better than the right thing. And thank God for all those messy moments, right? Which are completely intentional. Right? So this is something I discuss a lot with my colleagues and students too. Like, a certain amount of that comes from how much risk we tolerate and can handle in our improvisations, right? So Monk was somebody that liked to take a lot of risk, and the result of that is a certain kind of rawness in music. Somebody like Oscar had a more classical, working classical approach to the perfectionism of being a pianist, right? You're never going to hear Oscar sound anything but perfect. You're never going to hear him play anything wrong or make any mistakes. And that's why he wows us, right? And his solo piano playing is a perfect, I think, magnificent way to appreciate his greatness, right? Because it's all exposed, and the potential rawness, if it were going to appear, might appear there. That never appears. I think of, there's pianists that are celebrated for their trio work. There's pianists that are celebrated for their work in larger ensembles. Pianists like Ellington, who are known for working with big bands. There's a lot of great stride pianists that we know mostly for their solo work. And everybody, from, let's say, Art Tatum, Earl Hines on, did both, basically did both. Some solo and some trio and quartet, quintet, and big band work. So we as pianists, we often discuss like, who are the truly great solo pianists, which is it's kind of a different thing than being a great jazz pianist. It doesn't mean the same thing. Like, so, Ahmad Jamal, he's the trio, the masterful trio artist, right? So you don't hear Ahmad playing in quintet. You also don't hear him playing solo. He's a trio pianist. He's the man for that. He's completely changed the trajectory of the jazz piano trio. And Oscar is somebody that is very well known for the trio, but he's equally magnificent as a solo pianist. Monk comes in all varieties. Right? You're going to play trio, you're going to play quintet, you're going to play solo. It's great in all contexts. McCoy as well. Keith Jarrett is a magnificent solo pianist. Forgot about him. Magnificent solo pianist who also sounds great in bands, of course, trios, quartets. But he's, for professional jazz pianists, he would be one of the guys that you name as like, he's a particularly amazing solo pianist. Art Tatum, maybe the most amazing solo pianist, right? Bud Powell, somebody that more of a trio, quintet, quartet pianist. So Herbie Hancock sounds amazing playing solo, but rarely does it. Rarely does it, and probably doesn't think of himself as a solo pianist. He's about playing in bands, and he's for me, probably the greatest genius of playing piano in a band context. What I was talking about earlier, like listening, interacting, making shit happen in the moment, based on what's going on around him, interacting with, conversing with everybody around him, and also accompanying. Master. Maybe. Right. So, yes, I would pay thousands of euros to go hear Herbie play solo, but you almost never get to do it. I heard Herbie and Chick playing duet. That was amazing. Completely interactive, completely about those social skills that I was talking about before, the empathy, the mind meld of these two great geniuses becoming one, selflessness, no ego in the playing for either of them. That's a different kind of skill than playing solo. Hank Jones, master solo.
I miss him.
Master solo.
I really miss Hank. I told Joe Lovano this a couple of weeks ago. When I first moved to New York, I used to really enjoy watching I used to love watching those two guys together perform duo.
Oh, Hank and
Joe. And Joe.
They had a thing.
They had a real
Jazz for Obama. They did it.
Yeah. They Hank had this. He had this selfless approach to how he played, and he understood that the piano. And you know what's funny?
He was perfect.
He was
the pinnacle of elegance.
He nailed it.
And he was perfect without being virtuosic. He was perfect, but he didn't have the intention of showing off.
He didn't take it serious.
Completely about serving music. Let the music play itself. But equally perfect as somebody like Art Tatum or Oscar without the need to be virtuosic. Right? Kenny Barron, great solo pianist. Even maybe greater trio and quintet pianist. One of those guys does both. Tommy Flanagan, trios.
Miss him too.
Of course, great solo. Like
Jackie Beyer.
Jackie Beyer was amazing.
Yeah.
Bill Evans, both. Right? Great solo pianist, great trio pianist.
I was going to ask you about Bill because Bill's solo piano records, I think he overthought. They're beautiful albums, but I think at times, and it could just be me, there are times in the album that you're like, is he playing too much or is he thinking too much?
I think there may be some examples of that. There's some that sound like pure natural music, and some that do feel like they maybe were conceptualized a little bit too much. But Bill had his ups and downs, right? Day to day, week to week too. So there's a lot of recorded Bill. There's a lot, and it's not all of equal level, but his greatest playing is a gift to humanity. And just pure emotion. Like when you Bill at his best, you can really feel it. It doesn't just sound amazing, but you feel it. You feel like when he was feeling it. Abdullah Ibrahim is one of my favorite solo pianists. One of my favorite musicians, but completely underrated, underappreciated by the jazz community, in my opinion. Magnificent composer. By far the best way to hear him, go to hear him play solo. He's now 86 or something.
He's amazing.
But recently, as well as all the way back to the 70s, 60s, 70s, made amazing solo records.
Why is he one of your favorite pianists?
He's one of my favorite musicians, I would say. Favorite solo pianist. I don't think of him as like a... He's a equally one of a kind as someone like Monk. Similar to what I was saying about Hank, no attempt at virtuosity at all. Almost the antithesis of that. Pure emotion, egoless playing. He studies, he's constantly studying Zen. He's always talking about Zen. You talk to him and he's throwing out some mysterious aphorisms. But his power to make you feel emotion is, I think, what speaks to me. And he has a very deep concept because he grew up in apartheid South Africa. He has a deep concept of the social purpose of music, the ability of music to move people and make the world better, expose them to the possibility of a better world, expose us to the possibility of a better world, and inspire us to go out and create that. He can put you in a trance and go to hear Abdul Ibrahim play solo. I guarantee you at some point you will end up in a trance. And you will stay there for an hour.
You're 100% correct.
Or an hour and a half, and then you will come out of the trance and you will be a better person for it.
You're 100. I had him on my show about 4 or 5 years ago, and everything you're saying is right on the money. Everybody in the audience couldn't hear a pin drop. The music that he was playing, and his music's different too. It's not for everybody either. It's not for everybody. I think the spirituality thing, you nailed it. He has a very spiritual connection to what he's playing. Ahmad Jamal is kind of like that too, with him practicing Islam. I think that has triggered a serious focus on how he focuses on how he plays the music. Do you think that people should start listening to solo piano as a pianist? Do you think that, because I know that you're teaching at the new school, and you teach at William Patterson. What is it that you intellectualize as far as piano and thought process of playing?
Can you expand a little bit on that?
Well, every musician who I've interviewed who teaches, there's concepts and ideas that the musicians and future musicians that they're teaching they need to have outside of the band stage. Their approach to music, how they look at music. Putting the band together also formulates how those musical ideas come together.
So in other words, the question is about what I feel like all musicians have to learn from listening to solo records.
Yes.
Well, I would say first that all jazz pianists, everyone has come and studied with me. When you come for a lesson and you're a piano student, for the most part you're playing solo. So the students play solo for me. But in fact, their priority is not necessarily improving solo piano because most of them are playing bands. So there's always this confusing element. Well, maybe they would sound better if they brought a band, And sometimes vice versa. They sound amazing playing solo, and then the band comes and they haven't figured out how to play together with other people. So I do feel like there are two separate skills, and I try to spend some time with my students working on both skills, as I mentioned myself, because I'm also my own student, my own teacher. I try to spend some time working on both skills. I think that pianists, obviously, we have the ability to be both the band and the soloist, and it's all about the relation between the band and the soloist, the independence, the band supporting the soloist. Sometimes the soloist might start playing down here too. But for the most part, we have to be able to be the band here, and when the band is solid, the soloist sounds good. The soloist is supported. So it's a completely different thing for, say, a saxophone player to play a solo concert. Guitar has the same ability, but a little bit less, obviously, to play both roles. Being a great pianist, classical or jazz, especially jazz, is always going to be partly about independence. You know, it's not so simple as right brain, left brain, but there's something to the idea that, you know, I need to be in control of what's happening here and control what's happening here, and it's hard to pay attention to more than one thing at the same time. So you have to divide your attention, and to a certain degree you have to automate certain things, for example your time, so that you can rely on those things. And that's one of the great challenges and great rewards of being a pianist as opposed to, say, a trumpet player. I can sit for hours and be my own band, and it never gets boring. But it's an extremely rigorous mental work.
How often do you shed? How many hours a day do you shed?
Oh, it completely depends on the day. I'm not somebody that has ever had a strong routine, I'm ashamed to say. But I mean, certainly if I have like a solo concert, I'm going to shed until I feel like I'm comfortable. In playing Monk's music, that's a whole other challenge. So I was definitely thinking about preparing for this concert more than I would for a trio concert. So, and part of that is just how many trio concerts I've done, how many concerts with bands I've done versus how many solo concerts I've done. So I think ultimately to become a great solo pianist, you have to spend a period of your time focusing on it and play a lot of solo concerts the way that Keith Jarrett did, the way that, of course, Tatum did, and the way that somebody like Brad Meldo is now. Brad Meldo, Fred Hirsch before him, now Brad, I think, is becoming one of the greatest solo pianists that have ever lived. Not only because he's one of the greatest jazz pianists that ever lived, but also because he spent a lot of time playing solo piano concerts and working on them. And that's how you develop your craft. That's how we develop our craft, is by doing it in advance and in front of people. And I think that's something. It's a long-term goal of mine to start doing more solo gigs, so that it becomes as natural as playing trio gigs or quartet gigs. But yeah, I think that to be able to sound good alone is something that every jazz instrumentalist and vocalist should work on, and can gain an enormous amount.
you've endured a lot. You've seen a lot here in the last 20 years. The jazz industry is completely changed. I mean, there was a time when you guys could sell 50, 60,000 records, and now you guys only selling 5,000. There was a time when you go to Europe and eat good. It's starting to come back a little bit, but venues are closing. Where do you see Aaron as a leader and as a musician? Where do you see the music going now? On the live side, the education side, and also on the business side?
Right. I think from a musical side, let me rephrase that. You can cut this out. On the musical side, let me think about this. This is a deep question, a very good question, multifaceted question. I think that the music itself is as strong as it's been in my memory, right? With the exception of losing so many masters, right? We've lost so many masters during my lifetime, many of whom I have the great fortune of working with and learning from. Betty Carter, people like that. That generation has left us, with the exception of Ron and Roy Haynes, right? So the music will never be the same without those people. However, the quality of music being made by my peers extremely high. So there's a misperception, I think, amongst people that because we've lost so many of those generations of masters, that the music itself is dying. The music is extraordinarily alive and inspiring, and my peers inspire me on a daily basis. And there's some younger generation musicians that are also inspiring. So, and that are serious. There's serious cats of all ages now making music that wows me, right? So I think the music is healthy, and New York is still the center of the greatest music. Most of it is still being made here, although you can go to Europe, you can go to Asia, and you can hear some cats playing everywhere on a high level. So the music has been internationalized. Herbie talks a lot about that, and that's a beautiful thing. It's still about what's happening here in New York. I hope that I'm not chauvinistic for saying that.
No, you're not, because this is the epicenter.
And everybody comes, all the baddest cats come here from all over the world. They continue to come here. And if they don't live here, they come here for a visit, for inspiration, they go home. I mean, every month somebody calls me, hey man, I met you in Stockholm, I'm here in New York, I'm staying for a month for inspiration, can I come over and play? Yeah, come on over and play. This is still where it's at. So from a musical standpoint, I feel great about it. From an industry standpoint, you said it all. It's just a completely different industry than it was. When I came to New York in the 90s, it was a good time. Record companies were putting out jazz records, people were buying them. Record companies were marketing jazz records, record companies were making money off of jazz records so that jazz artists were making money off of jazz records. That's completely gone. I don't need to talk much about that. We can't cry about it. We gotta just kind of accept that model is gone. It's also gone in many ways for a lot of pop and R&B cats too, right? So streaming is never going to pay you what record sales did, and there's some truth in the idea that, well, people will go to concerts if they can hear your music. So basically making records is an opportunity to make art and to get your music out there so that people, when you come to town, will come to your shows. And as long as there are venues, and as long as there are festivals, as long as there's, for example, like European government funding going to support the arts, Asian government and also like private funding, supporting festivals, supporting jazz clubs, and as long as there's tourists coming to hear jazz in New York City, we will have places to play and the music will grow. And that is thanks to the end of the pandemic. You can see that New York jazz clubs are full. they're full. Every single, I mean,
Yeah. Even on a Monday and Tuesday night, Mesro and Smalls.
well, Mesro and Smalls are easy to fill because they're tiny. But like
Yeah.
Birdland, last
Yeah,
Ron's
yeah,
playing every
yeah.
night for a month at Birdland,
Yeah.
packed every
Packed
night,
every night.
show.
Yeah.
Vanguard, packed. You know, so we lost some jazz clubs. We lost the place that was
Blue
kind of
Smoke.
like my home, Jazz Standard, Blue Smoke.
Yeah.
You know, my generation kind of made that club in a way because it was the late 90s. We were the cats that I played one of the first gigs there with Jimmy Green. But hopefully Jazz Standard's going to come back. I have
Yeah,
some inside scoop on
yeah,
that, but
yeah.
it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
The city does need at least one more high-profile jazz club, but Smoke just expanded, right? So I think the jazz scene in New York City, as much as people love to cry about what we've lost, and I cry over Bradley's, I cry over Sweet Basil, but I think it's always going to be fine here. And the real question is everywhere else. There's less places to play inside the United States, less clubs that are bringing in touring artists from New York. With the exception of SF Jazz, there's not a lot that's come to replace those clubs, right? SF Jazz is doing an amazing
DC's
job.
lost a lot of jazz.
DC's Blues Alley is
Go-
not what it was. Boston has lost the Regatta Bar, and
What?
Scullers is barely hanging on. So Boston is a different jazz scene but look, a club will come back. If Scullers and Regatta Bar don't come back, someone will invent a great jazz club because there's a jazz audience in Boston. Boston needs at least one world-class jazz club, if not two. So I think as long as there are listeners, there's going to be clubs eventually. It's an entrepreneurial world we live in. It's capitalist society. Somebody's going to fill that niche. And there's nonprofit money for the arts that Winton has proved and SF Jazz has proved is a serious thing and can do amazing, good for the music. So it's also heading in that direction. I don't think that's a necessarily bad thing. It's maybe not the best thing either. It would be nice if jazz could survive without funding, but classical music doesn't.
Right.
And as long as
Symphonies are shuttering too.
yeah, but there's always going to be money. There's always going to be people giving money to symphonies, right? So small town symphonies are shuttering, but New York Philharmonic's doing just fine.
Well, yeah.
Just fine. So the Met is doing just fine. So I think there's going to be more and more, nonprofit jazz funding, and that's okay. And I'm cool with that. As long as quality of the music stays high, I'm proud to be a jazz musician. But yeah, we're never going to bring back the jazz scene that I knew in the 90s, and that's okay. We've got to just move forward. Make the best of our situation.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here, the famous Birdland Theater here at Birdland here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank the incomparable Aaron Goldberg for his time. Also, people, please support Aaron in his upcoming tour dates as well as order his music. Visit him online at aarongoldberg.com as well as follow him on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'd like to personally thank the staff and management here at Birdland Theater for their warm hospitality. Also, I'd like to personally thank Mr. Matt Merowitz for arranging my time with Mr. Goldberg. As always, people, I can't stress this more than enough. Please like, share, and subscribe to my videos here on YouTube and Vimeo, as well as leave comments. Also, follow me on my website, thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Also, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.